What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here to talk a little football. We had a little bit of a crazy week 2 and some price swings that came out of it. So I figured we kind of talk about it again this week like we did last week. If you got Tua, you're going to the moon, right? If you got Trey Lance, you're going to the dumpster fire. That's pretty much what week 2 was. We're not going to do like a full deep dive, but I specifically wanted to talk Hurts, Tua, and Lance. Very specifically because they've had kind of the largest price swings to this point, especially with week 2. You know, Hurts had a really good or a solid, very good week 1, backed it up with another very good week 2. Tua was obviously week 1, fine, and then week 2 was a freaking bonanza. And then Trey Lance is done for the season because he shattered his ankle. So we're gonna run through their charts and graphs, and you go to Market Movers, link in the description down below. $1 for your first month. A bunch of different pricing options depending on what kind of data you want access to. So go check it out. Let's start off with Hurts. Like I said, he's had a very, very strong start to the season. They look good. AJ Brown looks good. They all look healthy. It looks fantastic. Hurts running down the board. This is over the last 14 days. His base prism is actually up the most. In fact, both his base cards are up the most. The base prism's up 37%. The base optic is up 30%, while his optic hollow and his prism silver are only up 8%. And the silver actually hasn't moved at all over the last 14 days, which would take us just prior back to the beginning of the season. If we bump that back to 30 days, his silver is actually down 22%. If we go back to, would that be late August? So like mid-training camps. Everything else is up. Prism base up 24%, optic base up 28%, and optic hollow up 33%. So that's just kind of interesting. You know, if you bought his prism silver, let's back it up 60 days. That would have put us at the national. You're in the green no matter what you bought. You know, 60 days ago would put us about a week before the national. Base optic up 179%. In a PSA 10, optic hollow up 55%, base prism up 40%, and silver prism only up 16%. So if you bought silver prism Jalen Hurts at the national, you know, thinking woohoo, time to cash out, you barely covered your selling fees, depending on what you bought at. So interesting that his silver prism has not moved a ton. Now, you know, the next one that sells could break that mold. These aren't super high pop still. Maybe there's a buying opportunity there if you could find someone willing to sell at comps because it hasn't moved yet. I don't know. You know, those are the types of things that maybe you could leverage to your advantage. But as of right now, Hurts Silver, for whatever reason, seems to be lagging behind the rest. And like I said, it just could be that since it's a limited supply, the ask price on the lowest one is a little more higher than what people are comfortable reaching up for at this time. The biggest winner / mover of the week, Tua. Tua Twitter was going wild on Sunday. Just wild. Like I said, justifiably so. I have none of these guys' cards. I don't carry much of football into season of active players. In fact, I think the only card I have of an active player in the football card world is a Baker Mayfield Optic Hollow 10. So I have no dog in this race when I'm talking about these guys. But Tua, absolutely fantastic week. Carved up the Ravens secondary. Played okay in the first half. The second half is when that game really went off the rockers. Over the last 14 days, his stuff has been moving. But once again, the base stuff is kind of leading the way, which I find intriguing. And, you know, football base cards compared to NBA base cards are kind of a different breed. Base seems to do better in the football side because the population counts are still quite a bit lower on silvers and hollows compared to NBA. Because as crazy as it sounds, there's actually still less elite. Well, over the last couple of years, there's less NFL product printed than NBA product printed, I believe. You know, the PSA Pop Report numbers kind of back that up, especially in like 18, 19. So the trickle-down effect of that is that the base cards actually tend to have more value. Not in the silvers or the hollows, nothing crazy like that, but they just hold up better than like a base Luka is going to, or a base Trey or Darius Garland or whatever. But base Tua Prism up 67%, Base Optic up 35%. His Silver's up 16%. And his Optic Holo is only up 5%. That was over the last 14 days. If we go back the last 30, once again, green across the board except for the Silver Prism. The Silver Prism is flat. You know, its preseason price, it dipped down in season and is now rebounded back to where it was in the preseason. That being said, base stuff way up. 74% increase on Optic base, Prism base up 37%, and Optic Holo up 36%. So interesting, 2 players in a row that the Prism Silver is the one not performing quite as well. Let's go back 60 days, which puts us at the National, or right before the National. Base Prism up 66%, base Optic up 66%, Silver up 20%, Holo up 20%. So from that perspective, those are actually up 20%, not a ton, but they're both up about the same. But once again, interesting to note, you would have been better off buying the base cards in this case, which is interesting. You know, I just find that very intriguing, that if you would have went into the National and said, I have a budget of, say, $1,000 to buy Tua, and if you bought all base cards, PSA 10 Prisms, you'd actually be up more now than what you would be if you bought his Prism Silvers, which is just fascinating when you really think about it. You know, a lot of people, myself included, have said, you know, hates on base, this, that, or the other thing. But these numbers, at least in the short term, and this is across 2 players now, both Hurts and Tua, the base increases are outperforming Silver and Optic Holos. Why is this happening? My guess is, and this is purely a guess, it appeals to a larger audience because the price point is a lot cheaper. You know, for a Tua base Optic, that would have cost you $65 at the National. It's worth $110 today. The Prism would have been $77. It's worth $127 today. But if you wanted a Silver Tua at the National, that would have been almost $600. $585 is what they were comping for 60 days ago. That limits your buyer pool. And especially at that upper price point, I think in the current state of things, you know, with the way the general world still is, we're kind of in a weird place, that I'm wondering if people are not willing to spend as much into cards. Hey, you know, I came into this hobby. It's been fun. I had a lot of fun. I made a lot of money. Maybe I lost a lot of money. You know, I came in during the pandemic. I decided to stay, but I don't want to put as much money into it anymore. But I'm also excited for Tua and Hurts. So how can I get a piece of them and not spend $500 or $600 a card? That's my theory on what's happening. I have no idea if it's correct or not, but that's my hypothesis. Curious for your thoughts and comments down below, what you boys and girls are seeing out there in regards to this. Do you agree? You know, do you think that's what it is, or is this just a fluke? If it was just one player doing this, I would lean towards, oh, it's probably just something with the, you know, weird in the sales. But the fact that it's 2, both performing well, and both the base cards are outperforming the Silver and the Holo, you know, maybe we could draw some conclusions from that. And like I said, the best guess that I have is people still want to be active, but maybe they don't want to spend $500 or $600, or the number of people that want to spend $500 or $600 on a card is much smaller now compared to the number of people that want to spend $50 to $100 on a card. So it's a lot easier to move that price up, even if the population count's higher, because you just have way more demand for it. You know, everyone focuses on the supply side. You also have to worry about the demand side. So the demand for maybe under $150 cards is way greater than demand for $600 cards. I don't know. That's my theory. We'll see what happens, if it holds or not. I'm not saying run out and buy a bunch of base cards or anything crazy like that, but just some speculation. Let's roll over here and look at old Trey Lance. Hide your eyes. Hide the women and children. A lot of blood on this one. This is over the last 14 days. I went raw here because, quite frankly, there's just not a lot on the pop report for Trey Lance right now. And it just gets weird when you only have a couple sales. So I just went with raw cards. We have his base, Prism and Optic again, and Silver and Holo of the Prism and Optic. Base Prism down 51%, base Optic down 60%, Prism Silver down 56%. Optic Hollow down 40%. So an absolute bloodbath here over the last 14 days. If we go back 30 days, it's a little bit worse. 66% on the Hollow, 67% on the Prism base, 72% on the Silver, and 76% on Optic base. And if we go back to the National, about 60 days, not interesting. The Silver is only down about 10%. Prism base down 45%, 70% on the Hollow, 90% on the Optic base. So maybe it could just be weird things with endpoints or one-off sales here on the Raws, but that's interesting that when you go back 60 days, it hasn't moved as much. But regardless, since the season started, essentially, Lance is down 50 to 60%. Now, the curious thing will be, when does it start to tick back up again? Is there a buying opportunity? Is he going to get hyped again next summer when he comes back? It's a broken bone. It's not a torn ligament. Well, actually, I think he does have ligament damage too in the ankle. But it's not a knee or anything crazy like that. He's going to miss the whole year. We know he's going to miss the whole year. I frankly don't think he was ready to start anyways. I am not a Lance truther at all. But there is probably an angle here that if they get cheap enough and you're willing to sit on them until probably the National next year, people will be a little bit more hesitant on it because, he only really had the one super bad game and it was in a monsoon and then immediately got hurt. So it's not like he got a lot of bad tape out there. There's probably going to be an angle here. The problem is are you willing to tie the money up for 11 months, 10 months maybe, and hope that, Jimmy G doesn't lead them to a Super Bowl or something crazy like that or deep into the playoffs? And then what do they do with him? Do they bring him back? Do they trade Lance? Do they keep Jimmy G? Who knows? But he's probably going to get some hype again next year, and it just depends on if you're willing to hold. That's the trick. That is the ultimate trick, is hoping that it gets the bounce back and also being willing to tie the money up for a long period of time. Now, if you're getting stuff cheap enough, maybe the angle is go hunt Silver and Hollow Raws. Go hunt clean Trey Lance Raw, which there's still a lot out there right now because he's still relatively new to the market. His product's still getting ripped pretty actively. Maybe go hunt that stuff down and take advantage of the fact that you have a while until you want to sell that stuff. You could send that in at, you could send base trays at the $18 or $22 level rather with PSA. If they don't come back for 2 to 3 months, you don't care. Let them sit at PSA and marinate. Send everything at the $22 level. Let them upcharge you. If they're going to or not. If it comes back at 9, you might not get upcharged. And then you add value to the raw card that way. So even if this stuff keeps slipping, if it comes back 10s, and you bought in cheap enough, you would add value that way. And then if he does get a bunch of buzz, bunch of hype come next summer, you have the inventory locked and ready to go that you're into pretty cheap because hypothetically you bought it at basically its lowest point or one of its lower points right after he got hurt. And what we typically see, when you look at these injuries like this, where it's season-ending stuff, we've looked at Acuna in the past, we've looked at Tatis pre, the steroid thing when he originally hurt his wrist last year. And when Acuna tore his ACL and when I think like Dak Prescott broke his ankle or did whatever he did to his leg a couple years ago. Usually the cheapest price is like the first week or two after the event happens. Because what happens is everyone that wants to dump dumps. All that inventory hits the market. There's not enough buyers for it. Supply outweighs demand. The prices tank. Everyone sells that wants to sell immediately. Anyone that's not selling immediately is willing to ride it out. So then inventory shrinks up except for the people that are priced at his pre-injury prices. This is my price. I'm not moving unless I get that. So now you're just waiting for auctions to come to the market to try to catch one. And what happens? It slowly starts to take the price back up because of that. We see this time and time again. So if you're going to make a move, run the numbers, sit down, look at it, do your homework, you probably want to look to be buying in the next week or two, in my opinion. That's typically when it'll be the cheapest. Plus, if you're looking at raw stuff, it's not that expensive to begin with. A raw silver post-injury is $60. That's not like that terrible. You know, if you get those for $50 and they're clean and you think they're going to grade well, I don't think it's going to take much for a silver Trey Lance to be a $200 card come next summer, if not more. Like I said, I'm not a Trey Lance believer, but we all know what's going to happen here. He's going to get pumped again next year. It's going to happen. So that's my thoughts on Lance. If you have Tua and Hurts, obviously, if you bought multiples and you're way up, it's probably not a bad idea to sell. Tua is probably not going to throw 5 or 6 touchdowns every week. You know, Hurts looks really good. He's a running quarterback. That adds a little, you know, extra juice to an injury factor on him. He's also had a pretty cakewalk schedule so far. So that script could flip. And as we can see, the market is very finicky with these guys. So if you could take profits and you have multiples, that's the key. You know, when you only carry one card of a guy, when to sell is very tricky. If you have multiples, it makes the decisions a lot easier because you could sell off. Okay, cool. My portfolio is up 50%. I'm going to let these two go, and then you start to cover your cost basis on your Tua portfolio, if you want to think of it like that. And then if it keeps going up, you sell another one off, and then eventually you get to the point where maybe you're free rolling whatever the last one in your cart in your folder is, and you can then play a little fast and loose with it. All right, let's see if they make the playoffs. Cool. Let's see if he wins a round or two. You know, you could be a little cute with it because you've taken your profits on a bunch of other stuff already. So I always say, if you truly believe in a player, buy multiples, because it just makes the selling, when the sell decision, simpler, way simpler. And when the sell is sometimes the hardest decision people have to make. That's all I got for you guys and girls today. Like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube jazz down below. We will catch you on the next one. Peace.